Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. Today we have X-Men Origins Wolverine. This is what would have technically been the first in a series of X-Men Origins movies had this not gone so badly. Um, Gotta love Hugh Jackman. He's enthusiastic about the character. Just love him as Wolverine. He's a great Wolverine, even though even Bob Hoskins was once looked at as Wolverine at one point because he was stout and short and scrappy looking old guy. But no, they went with the much taller, very buff, and extremely muscular Hugh Jackman, which was a good choice. If you want to have a, you know, okay, I should say yes. They thought about Bob Hoskins at one point, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Um, but Doug Ray Scott was originally going to be him, but he was stuck in a Mission Impossible movie against Tom Cruise, so he couldn't take the job, and they brought in Hugh Jackman. That's the history of Wolverine. Good, great. Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. Um, I was there also when Hugh Jackman suddenly showed up in Hall H out of nowhere and said, "Hey, I'm here to tell you that Wolverine is we got some stuff for you." So at Comic Con in Hall H many years ago. So uh, to say that I was excited for the film and having loved the X Men films, especially and growing up reading the X Men comics since the '80s is when I started reading them. Uh, you have to understand my love of the X Men, my love of Wolverine, and how I love Hugh Jackman as an actor, as Wolverine, especially. Uh, it goes completely against that to say that I don't like this movie. I do not like this movie at all. Um, it was co-written by one of the guys who went on to make Game of Thrones, which was a good thing apparently until the last season, which many people had a problem with. I was not too caught up in the whole love and hate of it. It ended, and yeah, whatever. But that's Game of Thrones. Wolverine, however, it seemed like they had a checklist, and they just they did. It was okay. Here's fan service. The fan service checklist was, make sure that certain people show up, certain characters show up. Make sure he says "bub." Make sure we get his origin pretty much down pat, except for a few exceptions. By the way, yeah, this was, oh my gosh, this is 2009. This is a 12-year-old movie. It's an hour and 48 minutes long, and okay, it's not all bad, but I'm hard pressed to tell you what was good beyond Hugh Jackman. Oh, and Liev Schreiber is a sorry, Tyler Mane, but he's a much better Sabretooth, a much more interesting Sabretooth, a scarier one. Um, yeah, I mean, it's yeah, the fact that they introduce him in this as a completely different actor, as not the Tyler Mane Sabretooth from the X-Men first two X-Men movies, kind of makes this whole continuity kind of screwy. How does Liev Schreiber turn into that Sabretooth? Are they the same Sabretooth? You know, there's certain things in this like Silver Fox, his Logan's girlfriend. Her sister happens to be Emma Frost. I mean, there's just I could go super nerdy and go, well, this is not like the comic books in this way. It's not supposed to be. I know that it's not supposed to work out this way. But we had good X Men films. Again, we're still, even though we've had superhero movies for decades, and Richard Donner had been very much responsible for making the definitive superhero movie in Superman back in 1978, and he's actually an executive producer on this film, and he has been, I think he's been executive producer on the X Men movies. At least Lauren Schuler Donner relation is involved in all these X Men movies, but all the Fox superhero Marvel movies. But it couldn't save this. There's an obvious. By the way, speaking of Richard Donner, rest in peace. there's an obvious nod to Superman in this movie. In the comics, again, I'm going to have to make a comparison to the comics. Wolverine, after going feral, after getting the adamantium in his body and just running naked out of the facility, is found by the Hudsons, Jim and Heather Hudson, out in the wilds of Canada. Jim Hudson and Heather, they're pretty much young adults in the comics, and they happen to also be working for a Canadian government team called Department H, and that's where they start Alpha Flight, which is another superhero team we haven't seen yet in the MCU, or in even the Fox cinematic universe. In this, they're just two old people driving a pickup truck, and instead of coming across a baby inside a spaceship in the middle of Kansas, they come across a naked man running into their barn in the middle of Canada. I'm guessing Alberta or British Columbia. I'm not sure what part. I don't remember. But the point is, it feels like it's a shot-for-shot redo of the original Superman. Like, hey, we're in a truck. Oh, look, something interesting along, as we're driving. And we had to take in this poor, unfortunate child, or in this case, a naked man. And, of course, their kindness is, giving him a really nice leather jacket that matches his dual brown outfit in the X-Men comics. Nice little fan service there. And also giving him a great motorcycle. They get murdered, of course. So, yeah, Ma and Pa Kent really didn't have to deal with that. That's more of a Batman thing. But they certainly didn't get to raise him, but they got to treat him kindly, and he dies. And he gets mocked for it, too. It's like, hey, doesn't you notice everybody sort of dies when they're around you? Agent Zero makes that mocking thing before he blows up. So, yeah, there's a neat little Superman reference in Wolverine, in case you didn't notice it. There's tons of fan service because we got all the different characters. We get Fred, who is the Blob. He's a guy who eventually gains lots of weight, and he's comic relief. He's Fat Joke. He's the Fat Joke. We get Deadpool, which is probably the biggest crime of this entire film, beyond special effects. Which, by the way, I'm gonna jump into this special effects real quick. Oh, when Logan first looks at his claws in the mirror, I swear it's like a Roger Rabbit sequence where it's like cartoon claws have somehow appeared in front of him, like in the real world. It's so unforgivably bad. I realize that special effects teams work on different parts of the film. There's not one that works through the entire film. That friends of mine reminded me, they were making a joke about it, and I'm like, I erased most of this film beyond the actors and key sequences just because I had to, just to say all is well. In my head, I had to erase this movie from my head. And I forgot about the cartoon claws. It's seriously, they're meant to look like they're sharp and shiny, but no, they're digital effect claws. I mean, maybe he was holding like green sticks, straws between his fingers and making him do this. They could have easily made realistic metal claws and had him hold them. Maybe that wouldn't look good on camera. I don't know, but it couldn't have been worse than what we got. It was just bad. And the other special effects, like, again, it's an action film, so you gotta have that slow-mo walk away from the explosion scene. Ugh, why? Yes, I realize it's a staple of action films, but you don't have to lean into it that hard. I mean, if you're gonna lean into it, but come on, it was just goofy. And I realize it's one of those situations where, leading up to this film, like I said, the hype that, Hugh Jackman showing up at Comic-Con and the trailers and everything else is just, we wanted to see this film. It's a situation where usually the trailer is much better than the movie, and it's a humongous disappointment in many ways. But again, it's the weird special effects, the uh, almost, yes, he's a superhero, but he should not be able to fall like 20 stories and just get up. Even though, yes, he heals and everything else, and he has this, the metal bones, still, it's not a quick get up. It's a ow kind of, let's, deal with this kind of thing. Yes, it's Wolverine. We don't have time to have him roll around and complain about the pain he has in his hip. I understand that. It's fine. But just if this was a little bit more grounded, like the movie Logan, uh, I love Logan. I love the movie Logan. I think this would have come across a whole lot better. And again, but we were not at that phase yet in superhero movie making. When the MCU came along and started, you know, creating that universe with Iron Man and everything else came after it, it these films were shot differently. They weren't shot as superhero films. They were shot as specific genre type films that had superhero elements. And unfortunately, they decided to focus on, hey, this is very much a comic book. And I mean, Ang Lee's Hulk did the same thing with the moving panels and everything else and the action sequences, but you can feel the way it's shot. I realize this is 2009, but Avatar came out in 2009. So it's, you can see the feel, you can feel and see how this movie looks, and compared to any, even the early Marvel, the MCU movies, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and they're night and day. So it's frustrating, and realize that this came out after Iron Man and Thor and Captain America, 2010, 2011. Okay, so it's before Iron Man, but shot around the same time probably. So it's, no, it came out after Iron Man. Sorry. Yes. So the frustrating thing is, hey, it just got difficult, subpar special effects and special effects sequences, like scenes that didn't have to be done on a soundstage with a digital green screen kind of thing. I realize it's cheaper to shoot it that way, but just Logan and Silver Fox riding in a car, it's obviously a special effect. There's on a soundstage and it's a green screen be outside the windows showing them driving. That's television levels special effects. No, when the mutants are escaping from the facility after they've been rescued, and they meet Charles Xavier, they didn't have to be running on a soundstage. I know George Lucas told everybody that they could shoot all digital these at that point, but nobody has to. And thankfully, we've kind of pulled back from that a little bit. You could have just had people running towards maybe a CGI helicopter in the distance, and instead of on a soundstage. Just, ugh. And of course, then again, I mentioned Charles Xavier shows up in this. Yes, there's spoilers in this thing because the movie's been out, and if you had any interest in seeing this movie, odds are you don't care about the fact that I just told you about Charles Xavier showing up in this. But they de-age him, and it honestly, it looks like he got a facelift, like a real facelift, not a digital facelift. It's like they just pulled everything tight, and he's just this weird mask of death. It's unsettling. You see Patrick Stewart, you see his eyes, you hear his voice, and you're just looking at this monster on screen. It's just terrifying. It's not the biggest crime. Well, okay, the biggest crime is, like I said, Deadpool. You have a character that is featuring Ryan Reynolds, who is, when he's not Deadpool, he's a chatterbox, he's a Mr. Funny Man, he's always making quips, he's smart and funny, and he can make people uncomfortable, he can make people laugh, and that's part of his charm. So when you make him the big bad at the end of the movie, the boss battle, you sew his mouth shut, of course. I realize after watching it this time that there's a very good reason why they did that, because if Wolverine was fighting Deadpool in the final battle and Deadpool was too likable, as in like, hey, Logan, how's it going? Like my sword, and I have all these powers now, and just like him just making dumb little comments and quips. If he was funny, you'd like him probably more than Wolverine, and you can't have that. It's just how it works. It's so, yeah, they had to shut him up. They had to sew his mouth shut. I hated that, but I understand why it happened. But it's still a crime that you had a Deadpool Wolverine fight and it wasn't Deadpool at all. He had all these different powers that were put into him. No, at most, in the comics, he got the healing factor. Yes, understood. And he's fights like a ninja, as all white guys do, with in part of government programs. But still, I don't know. Thankfully, Ryan loved the character enough to bring him back from the dead. Not in the same way that was hinted at the very end credits. There's two end credit scenes. One that just involves Stryker, and the other one involves Deadpool going shh now that his lips are unsealed, as his hand reaches for his decapitated head. Yeah, like we're going to come back for Wolverine 2, and there's going to be more of this atrocity on screen. And maybe he would have come back in a future Wolverine movie had these been good. And he would have been in the red and black suit, and he would have talked a lot, and he would have been obnoxious. But it still would have been consistent with the character that he was just playing. So, yeah, why? Thank you, Ryan, for bringing bringing Deadpool back in the way he was meant to be. For 2 and hopefully soon 3 films, even within the MCU, as a rated R film, as Deadpool should be. Bloody, profane, and obnoxious. It's him wanting to right that wrong is probably one of the best things that has come out of this movie. So, thank you for being a fanboy, Ryan. And honestly, considering how bad this is, even if any of the sequels had been bad, there's no way they can be as bad as this one. The Wolverine is great. I actually really enjoy it. It's a little clunky at parts, but it looks great. Logan is, to me, a masterpiece compared to the other two. It is beautifully done, and it's a great capper to this character's story, and Xavier's story, and introducing X-23. It's emotional. It's got great acting. It's got great action that is grounded in reality, and so much better. So I imagine hopefully soon we'll have Logan added to the Disney Plus list, and we'll get to talk about that. So here's that was a little sneak preview. Other things, yeah, Gambit is in this. Taylor Kitsch has his role. I never really cared about Gambit that much. I read every single appearance he was in throughout the years. I'm still reading X-Men comics. But he's never been interesting to me. And Taylor Kitsch could have been good as him beyond this film, maybe. They talked about making a film for Gambit for a long time. This is meant to be a launching point for so many things. But it's never going to happen. At least not in the way they expect. There might be a Gambit film someday in the next decade or two, but it's probably not going to be Taylor Kitsch. And it's probably not going to have any connection to this. Thank God. But yeah, I'm sorry to say that this is a Marvel movie that I don't like. And by the way, I forgot to mention this. This is kind of cool. Today is the 616th episode of the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and 616 is the universe number for the Marvel universe, not the cinematic universe, not the Fox universe, but the comic book universe. I almost kicked this to the side and said, we're gonna watch Marvel 616 instead, because you never get a chance to do that again. But screw it, it's done. I watched it. So yeah, 616. If you're confused by what I just said, you can look it up. Just look up Marvel 616. Yes, it'll point you to the Disney Plus series, but all the universes have a number, and they're connected in different ways. So, yeah, that's something you needed to know or care about. Yeah, if you want to understand Wolverine's origin, it is pretty much by the numbers. It does give you his origin. It gives you a good overview of how he became the man he is, how he got his claws, why he doesn't age, and why he suddenly ages really quickly from a child. Maybe it's after he just pops his claws and gets his healing factor. That's when it kicks in, where he doesn't age much, but he had to age up to be an adult-looking dude. Same thing with Sabretooth. And then they stopped aging when they started going to war, apparently. I don't know. And they were in the Civil War, they were in World War One, they were in World War Two, they were on the beaches of Normandy, they were in the Vietnam War, and God knows everything else in between. And they just never aged after that. It's one of those little nitpicky nerd things that I see. Yeah. So I can't recommend this film beyond you wanting to know what his origin is like. It is kind of neat for me that it ended in Pennsylvania. That's where I'm from. But on 3 Mile Island, I remember that disaster. Yes, I do. I don't remember the disaster where a bunch of guys fought on top of one of the cooling towers and destroyed it. Yeah, I don't remember that. Oh, that's right, because this is happening so many years ago. Maybe they're the guys who caused... That's okay. That's been implied. I didn't realize that was implied, that they caused the meltdown on 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania. I've driven by that thing so many times. Yeah, it's my hometown-ish area. Okay, so I'm guessing this has happened in like 1979 or something like that, when Wolverine fought Deadpool on top of 3 Mile Island. And they caused... Yeah, okay, great. Yeah. So yeah, I liked that part, I think. Anyway, that's enough. That's enough crapping on this movie. Hopefully we could... Who knows what we'll get next? Maybe we'll get another X-Men movie or some other Marvel thing. Let's pick it right now.
478.
Okay. Well, no, we're not going to get that, but 478. We won't get an X-Men movie, I don't think. 478. Hey! Another origin story. And we haven't had a Star Wars thing in a while. So, holy cow, I think I might enjoy revisiting this film for the first time in a while. I was hoping it was going to pop up soon. So we're going to watch Solo, a Star Wars story. Yeah. Okay. It's a little bit of a controversial film for some people. I don't know why. I think some people thought they had to. You know what? I'll talk about it tomorrow. Talk about it tomorrow after I watch it again. No need to talk. This is long enough. So we're going to watch Solo, a Star Wars story on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge tomorrow. I'll see you back here.